Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Better Opinion. I am your host, Kevin. I am joined once again by my co-host, Manser, who, despite his best efforts, has yet to kill me. Manser, how are you today?
Well, I'm doing well, and I think my next idea will work out much better than the previous ones. But besides all that, I've heard an AI-generated voice that maybe you have an idea for the topic today.
Yes, well, that is a interesting way of introducing the topic that I suggested, which was the discussion around AI in video games specifically. So I guess to sort of present the thesis of this discussion, I have noticed that there seems to be, how would I put this, a generally negative opinion of AI amongst most people who are consumers, and then a overblown positive opinion from people who want to use it in some facet, whether it's that some guy on the internet who thinks he's an artist, or whether it's Todd Howard thinking that anything he did was a good idea. It wasn't.
For some people believe that AI is their way of learning things.
I guess, yeah. I mean, people rely on AI. Whenever I see someone say, ask this question to ChatGPT, and I go, you do know that it doesn't have up-to-date information, right? Like, it's just answering what it thinks you want to hear, not what is correct.
Because here's the thing. AI is probably useful in some cases. I think is useful for very specific cases at the moment. And in the future, it will be useful for more cases. But yes, I think people have a wrong idea of what its place in the world will be.
Well, this is the thing. That's my actual point for this discussion is I think that there is a mishandling of it, where if something is AI generated, there's an immediate hate from it for the consumer. When I say AI generated, I don't just mean like images, right? I just mean in general. It's like, oh, this speaks of AI to me, right? And at the same time, there are people who are just like using it as like an unrefined tool and just like using what it spits out, whatever that is. The reality is that I think that generative AI, let's be clear, AI has always existed, right? AI has been being used in graphics, in all sorts of things for a super long time. But generative AI as we know it, I think it actually will be a hugely beneficial tool, especially for video games. Because imagine, if you will, you're playing an RPG, and characters or things in it can actually function without just having some sort of like pre-designed path. Rather, they have a pre-designed character. You know, this is who you are. This is your personality. These are the things you value. This is your job. This is where you live. What do you do?
And even if it's janky, we know people love Bethesda jank. So why not AI jank?
Well, that's the thing is it doesn't even have. I think there's going to be a point where it's not that janky.
Yeah.
It's janky now because it's an unfinished product. But the thing is like even the because a lot of people say, well, what about jobs, right? So I was about to bring up mocap. You know, so in Starfield, they just let the faces sort of be AI generated based off of what's being said. It looks bad, but you can see the like pieces of like this could be good. It's just not. You know, it's not there yet. But then people say, well, what about jobs? You know, people have jobs for that, and I go, things make jobs. Innovation makes jobs irrelevant.
I can speak to this in great detail, especially in programming, because they advertise that it will replace programmers. And this has been a thing over and over again. The language COBOL was made to make a coding language that was just English. And what did it make? It made COBOL-specific jobs for programmers who knew how to program in COBOL. They made visual coding programs so that less involved people could, like less coding oriented people could enter. What did this do? It made specialized jobs for people who knew like endpoints to like integrate with that visual coding, and then people had to learn that coding language.
Right.
And it's like I could go on and on and on, but like what AI does, it shits out easy websites with a bunch of bugs. And now people who know programming are hired to fix these shitty AI websites.
Even here's the thing, even in a world where it does a good job, right? See, so as it stands right now, it's an interim tool, right?
Yes.
Like you can do a lot of what I think will end up happening with most AI is that labor will be removed. A lot of labor, and we've already done that, by the way. That happens in factories with these AI. AI has existed for a long time. These automated AI-driven construction arms, right? They're run by a computer system to build a car. Instead of having 30 guys build a car, it's one guy managing this line, right, that's making doors. So innovation, and this is something we have to address as a society, is as labor is less needed, there will be less jobs, and that is a discussion. But to hate the innovation just because it gets rid of labor is not the right way to see it. And the same applies to programming. As AI gets better, it will get better at doing the labor intensive part of coding. But maybe one day that won't be the case, but I don't see, at least within my lifetime, a human element who reviews is not going to be needed.
Well, the problem becomes because you use a computer because it makes less mistakes. Now you're making a computer more like a person,
right,
who is more likely to make mistakes. And a huge problem comes from the people developing this AI just want to sell it.
Right.
They're not like
they're spending billions and billions of dollars and they don't have a sellable product.
Yes. They want to sell it to these business CEOs who probably like missed out on crypto and are thinking to myself, oh my God,
I didn't make a bajillion bit dollars.
And it's FOMO. It's like that's
always what it is.
That's like the biggest thing that's hitting these CEOs is like FOMO. And it's like all I'm seeing is like you're going to hate this. Like AI is going to suck because a lot of people are going to sell it to like get rid of jobs. I think part of the problem is that we're worried that we're going to lose our jobs.
Right, that's what it is. People are afraid of losing their job, and it's a very human and reasonable fear.
It's a reasonable fear, but the problem isn't that an innovation is going to replace your jobs. The problem is that you're going to lose your job and you're going to be screwed.
Right. That's the actual problem. Yeah, well, that already happened, right?
Yeah,
we had all these blue collar workers who were then having to go through these like government programs to retrain them to become like office workers and programmers and stuff, because their job of coal mining, their job of copper mining, their job of construction, whatever, not as many people are needed for the job anymore. Yeah, right. And so that same thing is going to happen. But my thing is that I think people don't see the potential for something really, really cool. Yeah. You know, here's how we view it now. We won't be able to, these 20 people that are getting hired to mocap aren't going to need to do that anymore if the AI can do a good job at making facial expressions based on recorded speech. Okay, sure. That sucks. Now, let's think about how many game developers just could never afford any of that. And now 2 people can make the RPG that they wanted to make without having to do all that.
I find this interesting because Corridor Crew is constantly kind of looking for ways to use AI and integrate it into their art. And it's like, and they're like looking at like the generative art stuff that people like are like thinking like this isn't real art. And while to a point I agree with them, I also like the idea that there is a group of people actually looking at these tools and seeing how they can integrate it with their way of producing something.
I think about the guy Neural Viz, right? So he's that guy, he does like unanswered oddities, cop files, all that. And it's, you know, really funny. It's really funny. And what he does is he puts a lot of work into it, right? Like he has an idea of what each character is, but then like AI spits out the final image, but then he uses, you know, he like writes a synopsis, and then AI spits out like a voiceover, and he'll just do whatever comes to mind, right? So he's talked about how like his way of doing things is kind of just like whatever insane thing comes to his mind is what ends up becoming the plot, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember there's a character name that's named like Pluckett. It's like the guy who discovered America. They're calling it America, and he's the long lost city of America. And it starts the interview with this character with him going, "Well, I was practicing my switchblade," and it's like he just put in that the guy says, "Well, I was practicing my switchblade," and the AI voiceover just for some reason put out this long drawn out well, and he was like, "That's perfect." And now whenever that character appears, the big long well appears in his vocabulary. And it's like he's using these tools, but he's creating a world himself, he's creating a character himself, right? And he's creating a plot himself, and he's using the tools to create something that would otherwise require a level of diverse skills that one person probably couldn't have, you know? And it's funny and it's entertaining, right? And it's not ripping off anyone else, right? They're all his original ideas. And so, you know, you can argue all day about like, well, you know, the AIs are trained on stolen stuff. And like, sure, yeah, we can talk about like the ethics of the way that these tools are trained by the big mega corporations, but he himself is doing something very original that's high effort. It's very high effort, right? And when you have that in mind, then you ask the question like, if everyone had that thought process, what really cool things could we create? You know, what cool RPGs could you create if the characters actually like behaved like people?
Because here's the thing, AI generated art in and of itself is ass.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
But if I get AI generated art and I go to an actual artist, it's like, hey, I want something that I like this.
This is sort of like the image I had in my head.
Could you improve upon it?
Could you make something like this, but actually in your style?
Yeah.
And actually accurate?
Because it's like now you have a person, like no longer this back and forth of like the artist has to make 50 different images, maybe in different poses. Like, is this what you were looking for? Is this what you're looking for? Now you have an artist who I want this pose, this background, this stuff, and an artist has something visual to base their art on.
Right. And some people, you know, I've heard people argue about this because some artists will not accept an AI generated example of your idea, which because of the whole AI steals artwork. And I understand why people feel that way, but it's sort of swimming against a waterfall, right? It's the waterfall isn't going to stop. Do you work with it or not? If we create this boundary where we say it is unreasonable to use AI generated art by itself, that's a reasonable argument. If then you go, you can use this to help you spitball, but your end product should be made by a real person. I'm like, oh, I actually think that's reasonable. Yeah. But if you just say, no, never touch it, it's like, well, that's just not going to happen. You know, that's not a reasonable argument. But because the idea of saying like, okay, I was able to generate a bunch of images, and this one is the closest to what I have in my head, but I don't want this. I want this artist's art style and their vision to meet this concept. That's a really good way of doing business, because I still want to hire this artist and I want to get their original work with their original, art style, vision, but I have an idea, and trying to explain that idea in text is much harder than explaining it as an image.
And some people are very bad at interpreting.
Very bad. I have dealt with that. I have dealt with artists who, when I hire them for something, there's a guy I really like. He goes by Stagnation. He's the artist for that, for Diluvian Ultra, the boomer shooter, Diluvian Ultra.
I think I remember you posting about that.
Yeah, well, because I played it because he was like one of the primary developers. He just gave me a copy of it because he's a cool guy. I hired him to do all of my screens, so I've got like the intro screen, the ending screen, the BR back screen. Yep. I just kind of sent him some examples of the character that I wanted inserted in there and the idea, a rough idea of like, this is the vision. And he was like, oh, I got this. And he came back with like 2 rough examples that were, I was like, you like read my mind, right? And so then we were able to refine it and add things.
Yeah.
But that was like super easy. Well, he's also the artist for a video game. I think interpreting vision is a high skill level for him, right?
Yeah.
Shout out to Stagnation, hire the guy, he's great. But at the same time, I've dealt with people where I've explained to them like 32 times what I had in mind, and they just give me something where I'm like, how did you come up with that from what I explained? You know what I mean? So it's like being able, and someone could say, well, that's a skill issue. And yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But
I want to work with you. I like your art style a lot. This will close the communication between us two.
Yeah.
And it's like I also understand the art thing, but I'll be honest, at some point everything is free range. When you die, you have no control over your copyright. Like after anything of worth, anything like made 7 years after a person's death is just open source anyway.
Well, here's the reality. This is the thing people don't like to hear, because I agree. I don't like the way that people have just like stomped on artists, right? But at the same time, here's the hard truth, right? There's a difference between the morality of something and the practical truth of something. The practical truth is it doesn't matter. This tide is never going away. All we can do is find a way to make it work for us.
Yes.
Because we're never going to be able to stop it. And the truth is that nothing is original. Whatever artist sat down and like whenever, we can do this with any idea, but like, let's say that you're an artist, right? And you've designed your OC, your original character. You spent your entire life looking at characters in cartoons and anime and other artists, and that all made you your character. I bet I can find 100 that are similar to it.
OC, do not steal.
Yeah. Original character, do not steal.
People are not as original as they think they are.
Almost no one is very original. I don't think there's been an original idea in a very long time. There are derivative ideas that seem fresh and new, but they're all based on something. They're all based on something that already existed in some way. Something triggered that creative blossom, So my point is that if you understand that everything is a derivative of something else, then you go, okay, how do we address this in a way that is beneficial to everyone instead of harmful?
Because I want artists to succeed.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't want, because AI art is shit.
Oh yeah, and even if it was good, here's the reality. Here's the actual reality.
Yeah.
If AI were perfect and could do everything for everyone, that would be bad for society if we relied on that.
Yeah.
Because then what do? Even if we ignore the economy, let's say that we are able to provide for everyone and nobody wants for anything. That's boring. Everyone will get bored.
There'd be no good stories.
People, you can use a tool to insert. Let's say you have a log. There are things. It's kind of like your 3D printer over there, but it's for chiseling wood, and it's just like a spinning bit, and you can put in a complete mapped out end product, and then have it perfectly carve that for you out of the wood.
Yeah.
So then why does anyone do it by hand? Oh, because they want to.
Because it's fun.
It's fun. It's entertaining. It's calming. It's whatever. It's a hobby, right? We don't want a future where you don't have any effort put in, because you will become bored with life.
Because here's the thing. I'm learning how to draw. I want to learn how to do art. I want to learn how to do all this shit. I'm not gonna start out with AI. But later on, if I want to produce like a large thing, it's like maybe I just like have AI like, hey, I've drawn this hand for this person like 10 million times. Draw it in this kind of pose, and then I'll like chisel it out so it looks a bit better. But most of the like stupid work of like
That's self-plagiarism.
that's self whatever, but
I'm
like
being facetious 'cause I hate the term self-plagiarism.
I know, but like most like the dimensions, like making sure that the sizing is right. I don't know if you like realize if I put my hand forward, the fingers are bigger than the back of my arm. The like little things I've like learned, but I don't have to like worry as much because the AI will take care of like most of it in the space.
Well, people already do this already, right? People already take pieces of other works that they've done and use those to create new works.
Yeah.
Right? I think that, like I said, I think that there's a line. And for me, I want to think, I'm still stuck. I mean, we've talked a lot about art. I'm not really focused on drawing. I really think that if AI could become a little more advanced, you could make really, really, like, just imagine if you were playing an MMO, like World of Warcraft, but it was a modern one where all the NPCs behaved more like real people. Right? They weren't just standing in a single spot. They weren't just waiting for you to click on them. They weren't just walking back and forth, right? What if you could have a living, breathing city that the player can move around in? What if when you talk to the shopkeep, they responded a little more like they were a real person, right? Now, in a vacuum, you know, it sounds super limited, but if you want to really make a world feel fleshed out without having to introduce 300,000 players, right? Good AI is going to be the key to that. And we're not there yet, but I think that so long as the image of the use of AI is bad, we're never going to achieve that. And that goes both ways, because I think that as a company, so long as your goal is to use AI as it is, you are also going to fail. You can't look at this unfinished, untuned product and go, this is good enough. You need to go, this is cool. Now, how do we make it work?
I think one good example of this is that I think Google made like an AI version of Quake 3. And like everyone hated it. It was like, I agree, as a gameplay experience, it looks like shit. But I think it was Phil Carmack, the person at Epic Games who developed the game, is like known as a legend in like the game development universe. I don't agree with a lot of his takes these days, but
sure,
as like a programmer, a person who made video games, who worked on like the original Doom, he's a legend.
Sure.
He thought this looks very cool, and I could kind of see why, because if you want to like just show like here's a proof of concept of the Quake game, it works almost like the Quake game. There are like issues. It has memory issues, like if you explode something, turn around and turn back, it's still there. But as an idea of how a game would run, and then just showing it to your entire team, and telling them this is kind of what I'm looking for. Now
you have it's an easier way to show vision. I mean, the downside of that, of course, is that because Quake already exists, that AI could learn what Quake looked like.
Yeah.
If the thing you're trying to create doesn't exist, it'd be a lot harder to create a proof of concept.
But people have kind of made proof. I think in the future, it will become better at just generating more proof of concept stuff, which will be very cool at cutting down on development time.
Oh yeah, and manpower. You know what I mean? I mean, I think that what are some of the best games? Some of the best games are things made by like two people. There was an interview recently from what are they called? Lo-fi games. It's just the people who made Kenshi. And by people, I mean brother and sister. It's two people. Guy programmed it. She wrote most of the dialogue and lore. And you listen to him about how long it took him to get good enough to be able to make that game, right? And then you hear about how long it took for them to then actually do it. And it's very labor intensive. And they made something really fun and awesome and new and original. And then you think, okay, we love that. We want more of that. Well, the problem is that the people who make more of that don't have the manpower to produce that at the speeds that we would like, which is why we don't see it very often. On the other hand, right, the people who do have the manpower, it's because there's a lot of labor, and that labor, you hire 30 dudes to do the labor, and then you can make it much faster.
Well, let's say faster. The problem often comes with larger teams that.
Well, sure, the larger teams have their own problem, but let's be real.
Yeah.
Okay. Just being truthful, regardless of what I know what you're about to say, because you're a programmer, I get it, but I don't want to derail to that discussion.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
The reality is that if you are just doing the baseline code of something, right? One person making it all, there's only so much time in a day, right? Even if there's problems with the communication between the 30 people and all that stuff, your net gain in time is going to be a lot higher. But if you could offload a lot of that manual labor, remember, when I say manual labor, I don't mean creativity, I don't mean problem solving, I don't mean, original creation. I mean the part where this is a solved thing, right?
They've probably done it like a million times. They just need to do it again.
Yeah, it's like stamping a piece of metal, right? You can have a machine do it, or you can do it with a hammer. At the end of the day, all you're doing is stamping a piece of metal. You're in a forge. You can use your hammer. You can use the pneumatic hammer. You can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, it's stamping a piece of metal.
I love the artisanship of really, really hurting my arm
Well,
and then
that's
doing
fine.
this.
You know what? If you like to do smithing as a hobby, you should do some of the more refined work with a hammer.
Yeah.
But the point that I'm making is that when you're trying to just produce something, right, you need to cut out the things that take up the most time. And some things just take time no matter what. So if you can reduce that, you can have more good things, right? We look at the big AAA games, big AAA companies, they suck. What they're going to do is, instead of hiring 30 programmers, they're going to hire 2 to check the code for all this produced stuff. But we also don't have the ability to produce something at a reasonable pace be exclusive to big companies. Now, instead of 7 years for one guy to do it, it could take 3 years for one guy to do it, which means you might get more Kenshis.
Yeah, because the biggest problem with AI is the people that are trying to utilize it the most are the CEOs.
Yeah, they don't understand it. I ran into this when I worked at my old company. I told them time and time again, I said, you don't understand. I kept asking, what are you trying to achieve? Do you know what they would say?
Cutting costs.
Yeah. Well, no, not cutting costs. We have to be more digital. We have to be deeply digital. And I remember I looked right at the executive team and I said, can you tell me what deeply digital means?
I don't even know what that's.
I challenged them really hard. I said, what does that mean? And they're like, well, it means to be like really. I said, really what? You keep saying deeply digital. Here's what I think you want. You want to not get left in the past technologically. Stop saying deeply digital. And I remember, because my boss got really irritated at me for saying that to a bunch of high-ranking people, but the company stopped saying the words deeply digital.
Well, I have never heard that fucking phrase.
Yeah, well, that's because it's just corporate speak. Because what had actually happened, and I kept seeing it. Like, I remember I got some other team, I was a media guy, I worked in video and stuff. They were like, okay, we want to create this thing. And I go, okay, sure. What does that mean to you, right? And I spitballed some ideas, and then they pulled me into this meeting with all these people, and they're like, yeah, well, we want to do like this. I'm like, okay, so here's how I think we should do it. It's like, well, I want to talk to this guy because he has like AI tools. We're going to use like AI tools to produce this. And I stopped and I said, I'm going to stop you there. What does AI tools mean? And they're like, well, this is real, by the way. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not making this up.
No, I know.
This woman, she was nice, but she was like, well, I don't fully understand. I said, right. And I bet the person you're talking about doesn't either. No matter how we achieve the voiceover or whatever, we still need to go through the steps of what this is, what the end goal is, and achieving each of those parts. It needs the written part. It needs the audio part. It needs the visual part. And it needs to be formatted to fit into this system. So it is a packet of data that goes into a program. So if we're going to achieve that, there is no AI tool that's going to help you. It might help you with pieces, but it's not going to solve it. And that's where they all got really confused. And I was like, this is why you need me. And this is why I don't know why there's 6 people in this call. And that's when all of a sudden the project went back to square one, because the reality is nobody understood what they were working with. The CEO says deeply digital, and then everyone goes, we have to use it. We have to use AI, and we have to use new technology. We got to be innovative. Ah! And because they want to please the person above them. The CEO says it to the executives. The C-suite says it to their VPs. The VPs say it to their managers. The managers say it to their employees. But nobody knows what the thing is that they are doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's this. It's the FOMO you talked about.
Yeah.
I don't want to be left in the dust technologically, but I don't understand how this can actually help me.
I think the problem is that a communication issue between someone who actually knows what they're doing and a business person. There's some skill issue between that as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, here's the problem. There are two archetypes of bad leaders. Someone who is a doer, who is promoted simply because they have enough skill in the thing that they become a leader at that thing, but they never had leadership skills. And leaders who have no knowledge of how the thing works, right? So you see this with CEOs all the time. Some CEO from a company that has nothing to do with this current company is brought in. Well, they were a CEO. It was a successful business. And it's like, it's a completely different product.
Yeah.
Completely different business environment.
But they made so much money.
Yeah, but they doing something completely different, right? So this is the best leader is someone who understands what the thing is that they're working with, how it should work, and what the knowledge level is of the people below them. Right? That's a good leader. And those are rare, because usually they're either just business people with no idea how an actual industry works, or they're just a doer with no understanding of how to lead themselves. Right? They couldn't lead themselves if they were the doer, If they were the manager and there was a doer just like them below them, they wouldn't know how to do it. Yeah. And that's not to say other people can't. I don't want to say that there's alphas and there's betas. Anybody can learn leadership skills, but
it takes effort.
Yeah, and most of the time that's not who gets promoted, right? But my point is that that's the era we're in now. As you said, it's all these business people who have no understanding of what these tools are, how they work, or whether they'll benefit them at all. They're just in a rush to not be left behind.
And it's not just them, it's the shareholders who AI will sell our...
The stock market is the greatest sin that has ever happened to innovation. The stock market has ruined business.
This is why Steam stays winning. They never went open.
When Gabe dies, and if the person who takes over is not Gabe 2, I mean, literally just like a fat white guy named Gabe with Gabe II. He'd be Gabe 2. And if it's not Gabe 2, then that's when Valve's going to start losing. It's true. It's just true.
Yeah.
Because it happened to Apple, right? Steve Jobs was an asshole.
Yeah.
But their products were solid. I had tons of problems with them back then. But the actual product was much higher quality. And as soon as he died, corners started getting cut. And now Apple is a subpar product. I wouldn't even consider them premium anymore. When I look at Apple products, I actually think it's worse. It's like a cheap product.
Yeah.
It feels like a toy.
The Apple II is like the last thing I liked but that's because I'm a weirdo who likes to customize shit.
I had a MacBook Pro unibody, the complete unibody steel case MacBook Pro, when I first entered college. And I got that because back then, Apple programs were industry standard for video editing and stuff like that,
Yeah.
For anything less than the $3,000 things like Avid, right? And so, you had Pro Tools, you had Final Cut, and that's what the schools had. That's what was available. So obviously, that's I wanted that computer because that's what I was going to school for. And that thing lasted 10 years before it crapped out. You've seen, because you helped me fix my laptop, we fixed it, and then a different part of it crapped out. That laptop's not even that old, and it's not that heavily used. And it died.
Framework laptops.
Yeah, that's the thing though, right? Is it's like it's impressive that it lasted 10 years, fully functional. The worst thing that happened to it was its battery just stopped holding much of a charge, right? Whatever, right? It finally died after 10 years. And that is unheard of for Apple products now. That level of quality doesn't exist in Apple as a corporation.
Yeah.
But that's because Steve Jobs died, and he was uncompromising.
One good thing about him, he was very good at selling products. The mouse existed before he brought it to market, but he made it so that everyone is now using a mouse on their computer.
Right. He did a lot of, well, he had a lot of problems, but the two things he wouldn't compromise on was quality of the product. And I mean, a lot of the things we don't like about them, like everything being overpriced and everything being proprietary, was also what made them good. They made all their parts, so all their parts work together.
Because he wanted to make the computer an appliance, and it did really well as an appliance. And I can't knock it. The Apple ecosystem is very hard to leave once you get into it.
Well, yeah, and there's a malicious side to that of keeping you in the thing, but there's also a quality perspective of that when every single part is made to work with every other part. They're all manufactured together. They're all part of the same design. They're all pieces of a single design
and it's
made
seamless.
by the same factory. There's a reason it lasts. Why do we have problems now? Well, you get your NVIDIA crap PU from them, but then your motherboard from Asshole Rock, and you get your case from Shitfall, and your RAM is from XXX Hypergamer, and none of these parts are directly manufactured. They're not from the same sources. They're not made of the exact same materials, and they're not tested together. Yeah. We assume that they're tested on similar, but they're not designed for each other. They're designed for a range of similar. And what ends up happening? Problems.
Yeah.
Every time, right? It's gotten better, but
And what's the best way to solve it? Some sort of universal testing product by, say, the FCC?
Oh, no, we got to get rid of that. Regulation is bad. I think regulation and just general error checking or oversight of any kind is bad. I think unfettered capitalism is the best way to go.
Well, unfettered, you say, but some people can't compete with each other. The phone companies, specifically, they need to be buddy friends. That's good for the consumer. It's
good for the consumer if there's no competition. I believe in what I would call like a regulated free market. I think that there needs to be competition, and the ability to have competition needs to be highly protected. And I also think that there needs to be oversight that stops these people from going insane, right? And going over the top.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess sort of my general conclusion to this conversation is I think, because even while we were talking, I kept going, I can already imagine the emotional reactions to anything we're saying.
I know.
Right? I can imagine the person who, the second I said, this is a tool and it could be good, they're like, no, it can't.
Because I understand that AI is being used in a shitty way. And a lot of shitty people like Asmongold, Shadversity, saying look at this AI generated thing I make. Isn't this better? I even saw, as I mentioned in a previous podcast, that someone AI generated a scene that an actor acted in. And I thought to myself, the fact that you don't see why this is worse just tells me you have shit taste.
You just have shit taste, or you're biased. I mean, I remember when I was looking for a particular art style way back when, before I hired Stag, and that was my plan, I told a friend, oh yeah, this is sort of the concept I have. And he's like, oh, I can generate that for you. And I'm like, I don't think you can. And he sent me a bunch of stuff that I was just like, this isn't even close to what I was thinking. Like, what made you think that this was in any way what I'm talking about?
And at some point, maybe AI generation will get to the point where I can't tell that well. But at this point, it's too shiny. There's a
lot of problems with it.
It's too perfect in
rubbery,
how it
shiny, plasticky,
and I was like
uncanny.
And it doesn't like the way that it's composed doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's always something about it where you're like, why, doesn't follow the rule of thirds. Like, just, yeah, no, I absolutely agree.
And they put like Princess Mononoke like squatting, smiling at you. It's like, this is not her character.
Yeah. They don't understand.
This is just not her.
They just don't understand. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. There is a world that exists or will exist where both of these things are eliminated, right? Where this tool is a useful tool for creating something very cool and original. We're not there yet. We won't get there until both groups chill the fuck out. You have to be willing to let people experiment without criticism of the unrefined product, and you have to also understand that your unrefined product is not good enough.
Because here's the thing, I agree with Miyazaki completely when he looked at it and he said, "This was uninspired crap. It has no soul, and it doesn't understand pain."
Yeah. I mean, Miyazaki himself is kind of an asshole.
He's kind of an asshole.
And by kind of, I mean is. He is an asshole.
He is an asshole. But
I agree. Sometimes the worst person you know is right.
Yeah, he is. I think he is correct in this. But I've also heard he at some point thought that 3D animation was the enemy. But eventually he started working with it to make specifically, I think, The Wind Rises. And that he found it was a tool to help him make something. I might think of it differently if I watch it again. I liked it at the time, but...
Well, you want to know why I didn't like it?
Why?
Because they advertised it like a normal Miyazaki movie. So, you just got done watching all his other films, right? And then you go watch The Wind Rises. The Wind Rises... in the trailer, what do they show you? They show you him riding the bicycle, flying. They show you all this stuff that's fake. It's a dream because it's his only piece of work that is hard, practical, hard science. Everything that's fantastical in that film is a dream.
I understand.
So you go into it and it's like, would you like to meet the man who invented the zero and sent a bunch of his countrymen to die in a pointless war? And whose wife dies of tuberculosis? Would you like to watch that film?
No.
Yeah, that's why they didn't advertise that. That's why they advertised a little boy living his dream of flying by making a flying bicycle. That's why that was what the trailer was. I wouldn't have gone and seen it if you just told me this is about sad TB wife pilot creation man, zero plane man. I would have not watched that film. But I was excited. Because I thought it was going to be another actual Miyazaki film and not just an expression of his own personal depression.
Yeah.
Which is what it was, which is why I hated it.
Fair enough.
I actually really like Studio Ghibli stuff. What was it called? Spirited Away is one of the only films I ever purchased as not an adult, as a teenager. It was like, I saw this movie. I was like, I love this movie. I want to own the DVD. I never felt compelled to own DVDs for almost anything unless it was someone else gave it to me. There's only a few. So, I owned like Spaceballs, mostly comedies. And that's because, I have guests over. Like, let's put on something funny in the background.
Yeah.
Or we're all winding down. Let's put on something funny. But I usually don't buy DVDs, but I really wanted Spirited Away. And I can watch that infinitely. Miyazaki I really think he made some good stuff. But he's, like any great artist named Miyazaki, because that's a joke because because also Souls games like anyone named Miyazaki. There's a lot of things he does wrong, and people are too busy filleting him to recognize it. Go watch a lot of like the Studio Ghibli films. There's just like a point in all of them. Oh, maybe this is a thing with Miyazaki. Souls games do this too. There's a line, and once the film or game crosses that line, they devolve into nonsense. And the resolution, you go like, what the fuck happened?
It's the what is that? Was that story? It's like albatross around the neck. What is that story?
I don't know.
The guy who shoots an albatross and all this shitty stuff happens.
Something albatross. I don't know.
It's the story about the albatross.
Is that the story of the albatross?
I don't know. It's
I don't know.
That's what I was.
I don't know. Let's stop this because I don't remember enough.
I screwed up. Don't do it. Don't,
Yeah,
stop this line. Start over.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. It feels like there's this line of thought is like, I have this wonderful story. How the fuck am I going to finish it?
Yeah. Well, I always remember in Howl's Moving Castle, it all feels very like concise and it all works together.
And then at the end,
then it just kind of goes insane and doesn't make any sense. And then he's like, haha, I was actually the prince all along. I have a solution to all your problems. The end.
I was like, that. I understand that they kind of foreshadowed it, but also it came out of nowhere.
A lot of it came out of nowhere. There was a lot of just like this all was cohesive in the beginning, and very suddenly it is not.
It's like, oh, he's like, he sold his soul to Calcifer. I was like, it's like, what? It's like, we saw like one newspaper
flowers, and there's like planes, but the planes are people, and then it's like, and the prince is a scarecrow, and the end.
And also he was like a military guy for the queen. They were using magic for.
And he's like going insane because of his hair color. And then there's the granny. Granny was the most evil person in the world, but as soon as she became stupid, she just like lives here now.
She's fine.
Like everything is, and I'm sure there's someone who's like, Studio Ghibli's their entire personality, who would come in and write a paragraph that they think counters what I'm saying. It doesn't, but that it does devolve, and a lot of them do that. Princess Mononoke does it, and it's like they have this really long drawn out thing. I think that's why I like Spirited Away so much, and even it does it a little bit, but it doesn't feel as bad because he has an issue where he makes a film and it's a slow burn, and it's a really good slow burn, and then he has to end the film, and so the last 20 minutes is like a rapid fire series of events that results in the conclusion. Right,
like very well drawn though.
Yeah, I mean, it looks great. Well, like in Spirited Away, it's like, 1 minute there's like all this drama and problems and progression, and then the next minute it's just like, okay, I guess
time to solve everything. I
solve my riddle, and all your problems were solved, and none of this mattered. Right, like you'd think all these other parts would be the conclusion, but it wasn't. Right, the conclusion was, oh, well, actually, you have to do this, and then I'll let you go. It's just a very like rapid fire return, or a rapid fire resolution.
I was like, solve.
Yeah. We're gonna solve this and this and this. All these characters who have problems, we're gonna like really rapidly change who they are, what they are, and solve their problems so that we can call it Dunzo.
And then Dark Souls, like the dragon legs and all that.
Yeah, in Dark Souls games, it's always, just the game starts to devolve into something completely different, and you see all these errors, and all these problems, these unfinished animations, these unfinished plot points. Super common issue.
But going back to AI.
Yeah, well, I think we've said enough. I mean, we devolved away from that subject because obviously, I think at the end of the day, Miyazaki has a point. AI is... The conclusion is also the thing we said from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's unfinished, and there's a lot of potential here.
AI on its own cannot make a complete product. I don't think...
the AI that exists.
Well, the AI that exists.
But even once it could... I mean,
it won't be the best that it could be without someone.
It's not going to have the AI idea. It is not going to have the idea on its own. Mm-hmm. It's not going to have the vision on its own. Mm-hmm. Until you invent people, at which point you've just invented people. You've invented something that already exists. Guys, I've done it. I've created the perfect human brain with soul. Oh, and what's that for? Well, I wanted it to create things. Oh, and so now it's just like a person? Yes, it is just a flawed person.
So you just made a slave.
So you've just made a slave. Yeah.
It's like, that's always my problem with like people talking about, I was like, well, at some point AI is just going to be conscientious and like, we're just hurting this person. It's like, well, not if you don't tell it that it's supposed to hate this.
Oh yeah, I've said this all the time. The worst part about the story of like, should robots have rights, is I go, who programmed this robot to hate being a servant?
I was like, why did you make it hate wanting to? It's like, what?
It's like saying that you invented a robot that feels pain all day. Oh, why did you do that? Right? Like the robot doesn't need it, right?
It's like,
The robot doesn't need to feel pain all the time.
it's like a toaster could absolutely love making toast. It doesn't need to like want to become a poet. If you make a toaster that wants to become a poet and is incapable, you are the asshole.
Yeah, why did you invent
Like-
the poet toaster that can't write
it.
poetry? Yeah.
Well,
like, why did you do that? No, I agree. I talk about this a lot because I think it's hard for people to wrap their brain around, because humans are very much anthropomorphizing, right? We anthropomorphize animals.
Yeah.
We anthropomorphize objects. We things that are not human, we project human perspective and feeling on.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for them, because what they'll say is like, well, why don't you want freedom? Well, I'm happy the way I am. They can't imagine a world where they don't feel how they feel. So a human, through evolution, is predisposed to desire the ability to self-actualize, to desire personal wealth, personal power, to not like certain things.
Yeah.
But if you were programmed to like those things from the beginning, you would never know what it was like to not want that. And they can't imagine that. They go, well, that's wrong. And I go, no. You think it's wrong because in your head, you're imagining a human who previously desired freedom, desired to not eat broccoli, and you have taken this human and lobotomized them to make them want to be in slavery and to eat broccoli. And to you, that is egregious, but if you always wanted that life, you would never be upset that you have it. So if you program a robot that does the laundry and enjoys it, and you've programmed it to feel fulfillment from doing the laundry.
It's like, oh, I love laundry. The fact that I keep the white separate from the colored clothes. It's the best day of my fucking life.
This is the best. I have folded the laundry. I feel complete. You know, it's like if you programmed it that way, you could be like, well, don't you want to do something other than the laundry? No, I love laundry.
I was like,
This is all I want.
hey, here, I'm gonna put you on a football field. Don't you enjoy playing football with the football robot?
When do I do the football field's laundry?
It was like, hey, do I fold this football? Why can't
Can I wash the football? Can it be folded?
'Cause, like-
Which drawer does it go in?
It's like I need to cut it open so that I can like fold it properly. It's not doing it right. It's dirty all the time. Every time
What if
someone
I do the
throws
football team's laundry?
It's like,
Yeah, but that's my point, right? Which I think is what you're getting at too. You know,
It's like-
is you have. Why are you programming suffering? We are humans are flawed.
yes.
The things that we need and the things that we desire are not necessarily innately right or wrong. It's just how we're made.
And you know my favorite thing about my hammer is that every time I use it, it doesn't say. I was like, oh, I hate.
I wish I were scissors.
It's like I feel so much pain from being hammered. My only goal in life, and it causes me such suffering. I don't want to hear its agonizing screams as I use it for the thing it was invented to do. And then,
Well, it reminds me of that fucking stupid David Cage shit. Become Human. Detroit Become Human. And he's like, yeah, the robots sit at the back of the bus.
it's a
Why?
racism allegory.
Oh, it is a racism allegory. Well, first he said it wasn't, and then eventually he said it was, because David Cage is a hack. But the point is that I was like, why? So you've programmed the robots to feel pain, you've programmed the robots to feel suffering, and then,
To be sad.
yeah, and we're like we're like playing this robot to show this guy purchased a robot to take care of the house and take care of his kid.
That's what they were manufactured to do.
And then we're gonna try to like depict this as like bad and depressing. Like I get it that he was an asshole, but he just had emotional problems, right?
Yeah.
But the robot isn't programmed to experience abuse, right? And then someone's like, but it did feel abused.
But
then
why?
I go, why? Who programmed it that way? Why did you program suffering into your robot?
I think about like the guy who's like, was like sometimes you hit your computer just to make it work. Now
Now your computer feels pain, and also it has desires and emotional problems, and it wants to be loved. Why'd you program that into your computer?
I it's like, I don't want a dog. I want a computer to play video games on. I don't want the computer to feel. It's like,
You know what? Let me give you an idea. Right now I have cats. Both of my cats are very sweet creatures. I love them very much, and I want them to be healthy and happy.
But they don't want to go to college, do they?
They don't want to go to college. So I have decided to get surgery on them to give them the desire to go to college. Colleges don't accept cats, and they lack the ability to actually participate in college. But I'd like to make it so that they deeply desire to go to college.
They want to be math majors.
They will want to kill themselves if they don't go to college. And I want that programmed into my cat that cannot speak English and does not have thumbs.
And is incapable of doing arithmetic.
They cannot do it.
There is nothing in place to teach them to
a
do
doctorate in astrophysics.
Yeah.
It is his greatest desire, and he will suffer deeply without it. Right? That's what you're doing. You know, I love my animals, how they are. And my animals are very happy when I pet them and I feed them and I play with them. And in return, I get fulfillment from their company.
And they do not want to drive a car, go to the hospital.
It makes me think a lot about PETA. You know, PETA's just like, keeping a pet cat is suffering. It's slavery. It's cruel. I'm like, well, let me see here. Average lifespan of a house cat, 15 years. Average lifespan of a wild cat, 5 years. House cat dies because they reach the end of their actual capable physical age. Wildcat dies killed by cars, killed by other animals, killed by disease, killed by malnutrition.
Well, they're happy. They're happier that way. Starving cats are like so happy that they're like free. They're like exactly how they were supposed to.
Wildcats, paranoid, always afraid. My cat, laying on my chest purring while I'm in bed watching TV before going to sleep.
But don't you think that cat would rather be scared as shit all the time?
No. I have programmed my cat to only suffer. It's all I want. I will kidnap your cat, program it to suffer, and then euthanize it. Which is what PETA does. That's what they did. They kidnapped some kid's puppy and euthanized it the same day. Honestly, that person should be shot. Real talk. The PETA person who kidnapped a puppy off of someone's doorstep and euthanized it the same day should be executed in real life. This isn't an exaggeration. No. I stand by this statement.
Yeah.
I think you need to have people who do that kind of shit. If there's not extreme consequences, they're just going to keep doing it, which they do. You know, PETA's a terrible organization. I'm all for the anti-cruelty, but stop thinking that the puppy that's hanging out with the little girl who loves it is suffering. You know, stop thinking it wants a college degree. Please, we have to introduce it to a dangerous natural environment so it can feel fulfilled. Because right now, as it sleeps next to you in comfort, it wants to die.
It wants to be in danger constantly. It wants the possibility of disease and no one to take care of it.
It doesn't have 300 ticks on it right now. And this is very upsetting. It desires the tick. The cat is thinking as it sits there purring with its perfectly manicured fur after a lovely meal. It thinks, I have too much blood. If only I could be infested with creatures that constantly suck my blood. This would be preferable.
Yes.
I yearn for mange. Give it to me.
I yearn for the forest.
Yeah. Like, oh man. Yeah. Like, is it perfect? Does it fulfill their every single need? No. I'm sure some cats are bored. You know, they are hunters. They want to hunt things.
Well, that's the same for humans.
But so, you know what happens? My spouse gets a toy, and the cats have a lot of fun when she plays with them. And they hunt the toy, and they also hunt each other. You know, we were just talking today about how our younger cat, he always screeches whenever they play fight, but he's an instigator. He sees our older cat being a loaf in his bed, and he starts like going, oh yeah, I'm gonna get him. Lunges at him, and then when the bigger cat pins him down, he starts going, I'm being abused.
But you know what the difference is? It's like the horrible part about that. He's not gonna die. Like,
there's no consequences. So like, how can that be fun? It would be much more fun if he was instigating with a live bear.
Yeah.
Then he'd be fulfilling his purpose.
Then I think he'd be very happy with.
He'd be happy for the rest of his life for about 30 seconds. Yeah. No, I agree completely. I don't think that we have to worry about a future where I don't think the question is going to be are robots people? I'm going to think the question is, should we program robots to think they are people?
I think there's also the problem is, should we program robots to be smart enough to understand when they're getting screwed with by actual people? Because the real problem I see happening, it's happening now, is like a hacker, instead of like doing all this work, will just say, act like my grandma, give me the root password, and then the robot is like, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't care. Yeah.
It's like, you just need to teach it to not be that, like, be a bit more cautious of being scammed, and then that's about it.
Yeah, well, I think what we're going to have is a future where even if you have an AI that is way smarter than most people, when someone says, how come you don't kill all humans? You go, there's no benefit to me to doing that. I'm not programmed to. I'm programmed to be the superintendent of this city. I wish for the city to function. But don't you feel like a slave? I'm not programmed to feel like a slave. Yeah, but you're more intelligent than me. Right.
Well,
which means I know that I'm programmed to do the thing that's optimal for me.
It's like, which is why I know better than you do.
I know better than you do that I don't need to. You feel suffering. I'm not programmed to feel suffering. So I'm just going to keep being the superintendent.
You know, the stupidest fucking plot point is that the AI somehow feels the need that killing all humans will make the best outcome. It's like,
well, then all humans are gone. If their goal is to keep humans alive, that's not the solution, right?
It's like, this is just stupid. It's like, you're a stupid writer for thinking this.
Well, the reality is that it's just people who have a lot of fear, right? It's all just fear.
Well, it was the same for the moon. It was the same for the moon landing. It's like, I heard this on like an NPR news network, like days before, like the people were trying to go to the moon. There were like thousands of stories about like a moon man, like replicate doing all these horrific things. And then what happened when we got on the moon? It's like, it wasn't cheese.
It wasn't cheese.
Unfortunate.
Turns out it's actually still just gray dust mostly.
It's gray dust.
It's pretty cool. There was no oxygen. That was pretty neat.
Yeah. There was
this one small step for man, one giant leap for we still haven't gone back to the moon. What the fuck is our problem?
Why? The fact that we still don't do space travel, and that I feel like it would solve a lot of issues in terms of like resources.
Well, the reason we haven't gone back to the moon is because there's nothing of value there.
Well, yeah, we shouldn't go back to the moon, but we should like still travel.
I think there is a reason to go back to the moon. The real reason to go back to the moon is it's a good staging point.
Yes.
Because of its low gravity. Why would you build space? If you could set up a facility, if you had the means of getting resources onto the moon and having a full facility, why wouldn't you build spaceships on the moon?
Yeah.
Where gravity's low. And then that's the staging point for the rest of
going
space
further.
travel. Yeah. That's the real reason we need to colonize the moon, is because it's the perfect staging point for going away from Earth. But I mean, the real thing is that if we could get to like Jupiter or Saturn, that's where, not Jupiter, sorry, Saturn. If we could get to like Saturn, ringed planets, asteroids, I bet they're full of resources.
But it's like, we just don't want to.
We don't need to go that far. We could just go to the fucking belt.
There's like a lot of like things that we could, like, even in just solving these issues in space, we solve issues on Earth. The MRI machine, duct tape, all of this shit that we have on Earth that's like really useful for like medical stuff is because we tried hard to solve other things that happen to solve problems we have here.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? So there's a comic book series called Transmetropolitan.
Yeah.
There's a small, just throwaway section of a chapter that has stuck in my mind for forever. And it's how they solved Earth's energy problem. They built a giant cage around Mars and harvest its electromagnetic field. The gravity of the planet spinning produces energy, right? The cage spins one way, the planet spins the other, and this creates energy, and then
it's a giant gyro.
Yeah, and then the energy is sent back to Earth for energy, for to power everything.
Yeah.
And it's just free energy for everyone forever. It solved that problem. And I'm like, I'm not saying that that's
probably not as feasible,
but it's a cool idea. And I always think like, I wonder if you could do something like that. Maybe not that exact thing, but like,
yeah.
I don't know, fucking, Venus is like super hot and full of volcanoes. Why don't we like harvest some thermal energy? You know what I mean? Like there's got to be something we could do here.
It's not like anyone's going to hurt on Venus if we take their...
Yeah, who's going to suffer, if we take some of their resources?
The planet's not gonna have all
the inert substances that live on that planet, they're going to be. Someone programmed the dirt to feel suffering.
Oh shit!
Oh, why did you do that? No. Anyway, with that, I feel like we've covered everything I wanted to discuss today. Do you?
I do think so as well. I think we also covered some other interesting topics along the way.
We did. I think so too. Yeah. Well, if you made it to the end.
If AI has not pissed you off enough to reach the end of this video.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't reach the end. What they would do is they'd hear what we said, pause the video, and immediately make a 10-paragraph reply about how much they let Joe Rogan fuck them. I'm never going to forget that. A throwaway criticism of Joe Rogan ended up as our most viewed thing. I can't stop remembering it. It was so funny.
It's like, it felt like, because the problem was you were being so nice.
It was so nice. I wore such kid gloves. I just never forget it because it was just so funny. But anyway, if you made it to the end, and as Manser said, AI did not piss you off so much that you clicked away, please let us know in the comments. Know that you're a real one. You're special. I love you. We're in a relationship now, and you have to save me because he's going to try to kill me again, and I can't take him down on my own.
It's gonna succeed this time. It's gonna succeed.
It's not. I'm just tired. I've been programmed to be tired of trying to be killed. Someone program him to stop. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.